And welcome back, everyone, to episode 2 of U.S. History. Today's episode will be nuclear bombs throughout U.S. history with Yesenia, Nick, Ashley, and Tyler. We'll be discussing an argumentative thesis statement, which I will state in the next slide. Our argumentative thesis for this presentation will be utilization of any form of atomic bomb should be illegal due to its mass casualty producing abilities, cost to produce it, and irreparable damage.
Nuclear weaponry was first discovered by accident by 3 physicists in Berlin, Germany in 1938 during World War II. They went by names of Otto Hahn, Lise Monite, and Fritz Strassmann.
You may be wondering how nuclear bombs work. There are 2 different types of bombs, nuclear fusion and nuclear fission. Fusion is an atom split into 2 or more smaller, lighter atoms, and fission is 2 or more atoms fused together, creating a larger, heavier atom. In order to fully understand the capability and severity of a nuclear bomb, we'll be taking a look at different dates and their significance. This slide and the next slide will show different times in which bombs were either created, used, or developed. This slide is another overview of the different significant dates that we'll be looking at. We'll be looking at the Little Boy and Fat Man construction dates, as well as the nuclear arms race, and as well as 1992 to present day, and comparing old and new nuclear bombs.
1895 to 1937, radioactivity was first discovered in France. Madame Curie discovered the elements polonium and radium. The first atomic model was proposed in which all atoms have a central nucleus which contains most of its mass and all positive charge. Leo Szilard conceives the idea of using neutrons to create a chain reaction to release a massive amount of energy. He also theorized that this technology could be used to create bombs. 1938 to 1939. In 1939, Oppenheimer hears about the discovery of fission. He believes it's possible to build a bomb. 1939, Szilard theorized that uranium could be used to create a chain reaction in a fission bomb. 1939, Nazi Germany invades Poland, starting World War II.
Immediate exposure to the atomic bomb would essentially cause death. With temperatures rising over 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit, burns were another severe concern. Radiation from the atomic bomb was one of the highest doses known to humans. Due to radiation, there were many concerns for pregnant women with unborn children. Most women who were exposed did not see birth defects in their children unless they were about 20 weeks or greater in gestation period. Radiation exposure is one of the most concerning long-term effects of exposure to the atomic bomb. It is based off the distance that the person was from the hypocenter, which is where the bomb was dropped, and then considering what materials were around them.
1939 to 1941. In 1940, Otto Frisch and Rudolf Peierls began to theorize the creation of a nuclear weapon. The National Defense Research Committee is created to research the creation and use of an atomic bomb. Enrichment of uranium begins at a Naval Research Academy. A subcritical mass is first developed. 1941 to 1942. The British government also begins development of nuclear weapons. The Russian government begins their own atomic program. The U.S. declares war on Japan following Pearl Harbor. A few days later, the U.S. declared war on Germany and Italy. The development of the atomic bomb is approved by FDR in 1942. 1942 to 1943. Enrico Fermi's group receives regular shipments of uranium and graphite to be assembled into a critical mass. The uranium shipments finally begin to be assembled in November. The total cost of the Manhattan Project is set at $400 million and FDR approves. The first modifications to U.S. B-29 bombers is set to be able to carry nuclear weapons. 1944 to 1945. Drop tests of dummy atomic weapons first occur. The first plans for a bomb test are approved. President Truman is elected in 1945, and the little boy and fat man are ready for atomic use. All they need by this point are the atomic cores.
The U.S. had to start somewhere. So that meant on December 28, 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt gave the big thumbs up to start the research of nuclear weaponry. This research project was known as the Manhattan Project, which was an all-American-led project. After starting the project, that sad day in U.S. history on December 7, 1941 took place. Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, and so the U.S. retaliated with their atomic bombs. Little Boy and Fat Man dropped from Enola Gay over Hiroshima, and then 3 days later, Fat Man was dropped over Nagasaki. A period of nuclear proliferation followed that war, and during the Cold War, the United States and Soviet Union vied for supremacy in a global nuclear arms race. You might be asking yourself, what happened after this? Well, for years the U.S. were the only ones with weaponry after World War II, but then the USSR gained the intel and were testing their nuclear weapons by August 29, 1949.
1945. Final preparations began for the Trinity test at the New Mexico test site. The first atomic bomb detonated in history. The explosive yield is 22 kilotons. It completely vaporized the steel tower the bomb was hoisted on. 1945, Japan rejects surrender. August 6, Little Boy is detonated over Hiroshima. The bomb produces a yield of 18 kilotons. August 9th, Fat Man is detonated over Nagasaki with an explosive yield of 21 kilotons.
Radioactive waste created long-term effects such as black rain that left traces of radiation in the soil along with farm crops. Many of this can be traced back to gamma radiation from the decay of atomic nuclei, which creates high photon energy. August 26, 1945, the first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. It killed about 80,000 people who were mostly civilians. Many more people died later due to complications of the effects of the atomic bomb. On August 9, 1945, the second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. It killed about 40,000 people, and just like the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, continued to kill citizens due to further complications of radiation. The atomic bomb had contaminated land, sea, and air. This made it difficult to obtain an adequate amount of supplies for the survivors of the bomb because most of the food was contaminated from the radiation.
As mentioned in the previous slide, some health effects that nuclear bombs have on humans is flash blindness. One megaton bomb, which is 80 times larger than the bomb detonated over Hiroshima, would temporarily blind a person on a clear night from up to 52.8 miles.
As you know, in today's society, a lot of things we see are via the news or social media. Back then, they had media, they had news. And the atomic bomb was actually very well documented to the public. The only thing that wasn't was what was happening after the bombs were dropped. But besides that, they had a lot of support behind them from the public back home.
And you duck and cover.
Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing. That's what this film is all about. Duck and cover. This is an official civil defense film produced in cooperation with the Federal Civil Defense Administration and in consultation with the Safety Commission of the National Education Association.
This video was a video played commonly within schools and seen on your televisions, during commercial breaks. Duck and cover.
The Treaty on the Prohibition of the Nuclear Weapons was adopted in 2017 in order to ban nuclear weapons. Many people wanted Japan to join this treaty in order to represent that they knew the extent of suffering from an atomic bomb and what their citizens had endured from the atomic bomb. Since then, the treaty has been endlessly advocating to end nuclear weapons.
The alternatives that the government can use on money instead of spending it on nuclear powers would be better healthcare systems, oil and gas, better education systems, and lower government taxes. Alright, so the size of old nuclear bombs compared to the present. The old ones usually had 100 kilotons of dynamite and some much higher. And then the blast of Little Boy released about 15 kilotons of energy. That's equivalent to about 15,000 tons of TNT. So these are some of the expenses that were covered during the Manhattan Project. For example, some of the heavy water plants ran around 50 million. The research and development team cost around 75 million. The special operating materials cost around 100 million. So the cost of the atomic bomb during the Manhattan Project during 1945, it cost around 1,200 million for US dollars to invest into the project. The cost of that during today's time and modern times would be around 20 billion US dollars to build the atomic bomb. On this slide, I have different costs of the atomic bomb in present time by country. For example, China is 10.4 billion, North Korea is 0.6 billion, and UK is 8.9 billion.
So let's talk a little bit about present-day nuclear weaponry. As of right now, in 2021, the most we know are the numbers right here on this paper. The top three with the most weaponry nuclear-wise is the US, Russia, and the United Kingdom. But again, this is only what we know of.
So the blast radius in both cities equaled about 1 mile, and it destroyed everything within that 1 mile radius from the center of the explosion, except for the reinforced concrete frames as noted above. The atomic explosion destroyed Hiroshima, that was identified as a city.
Piecing this all together, we can see how the nuclear bombs have caused tension that can result in mass destruction to everyone involved, death to millions, and money being spent ranging from 1 billion to 35.4 billion that can be spent elsewhere, as well as mutations that will last a lifetime. If we were to continue down this path, we could suffer things such as nuclear winters, nuclear famine, and societal collapses. A major nuclear exchange would have long-term effects, primarily from the fallout released, and could also lead to a nuclear winter that could last for decades, centuries, or even millennia after the initial attack. This slide has 5 of the sources we thought were the most useful throughout the presentation, and we thought supported our argument the most. So we have 2 that look at the medical effects of atomic bombs, as well as the 70 years later atomic bombs influence that it still had after the initial dropping of it and the aftermath of it. We also have a written report we found about the Manhattan Project, which really helped us figure out the timeline, which brings me to my next source that we looked at, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Within the website, we found a timeline that laid out the entire history of nuclear bombs and atomic bombs, and we also used a source that compared fission versus fusion, what was the difference, and these all supported our argument the most, as picking out the information we thought supported our argument where we did not support the usage of atomic bombs.